Hi, I'm Tom Fris, out here in McKinney, Texas, and today we're going to go out into my beehives, my apiary, and we're going to do some things around the Varroa mite, which has been quite a blight on the bees in America. So we're going to do some powdered sugar treatment, we're going to check out the frames, and we're just going to take a look at hives in general and some of the things we do to manage hives. So we're going to get suited up and go out and have some fun. The background on Varroa mites is basically somewhere in the 60s they started to become a pest and a problem to the beehives. So we, over the last, I don't know, 40 years, they have grown and grown and pretty much gone worldwide. Once they got to the United States, and I think it was somewhere back in the mid-80s, they basically wiped out, I don't know, 99% of all the what are called feral hives, beehives, honeybee hives in America. Just devastated them. Even today, there's a lot of problems with Varroa mites, and many of you are familiar with CCD, the colony collapse disorder. And basically, what they find is 30–40%, maybe more of the time, that ultimately it's not CCD, but it's Varroa mites. The key to keeping healthy bees, I think, and I'm learning this, is to have good hive management, number one, which means get out to your hives, check your hives, and so forth. Two, try a variety of treatments. And three, which is what I'm trying to do, is I want to get away from pesticides. I don't think pesticides, especially ones that could harm humans and get into the food, as well as harm the bees, is a good idea. So we're going to go out to the hives. I got my smoker ready and ready to go because I found that it's better to have it than not. We'll get out to the hives, and if we find any mites, one thing you might note is the mites, in proportion to our body, on the bee they look really small, but in proportion to our body, they're about this big. So you can imagine having a tick on your back about this big. And so that's why it's important we want to get out there and see if we've got them and then treat them appropriately if we need to. So let's head on out and see if we can't find some mites and treat them. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to open up the hive. We're going to go in and do a little bit of inspection. And then we're going to follow up with a sugar treatment. And what we're going to be doing is first I'm going to take a really hard look at the hive and see if I can spot any Varroa mites just by looking at it. The Varroa mites in particular, they like the drone bees. So there's the queen, and then there's the worker bees, the female worker bees, and then there's the drone, the male. The male are the largest of the worker and the female. The males are very large, and they actually don't sting. Their only purpose is to mate with the queen. So for some reason, the Varroa mites like those drone cells the best. And I think it's because they're just really large. I don't know. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to get a little smoke going. You can hear that nice hum of industry going on, and there's a bunch of bees for you. Anyway, this is the telescoping cover, and this is supposed to protect it from sunlight and our radiant heat. I don't know if it does or not, but I bought it, so I'm using it. And then all these bees, why they're up here, I do not know, but you'll see when I smoke them, you'll see them all of a sudden start running for the hills. See that? It's not just the heat of the smoke, it's their instinct to run away. So I get a little smoke under there. And this is the cover board. Get a little smoke under there, and the idea is not to kill any bees while you're doing this. Oh, there's one. There's a dive bomber just went after me. It's not to kill any bees while you're doing this because they release a scent, and it's a attack scent, and so it'll get them all going. And we don't want that. So just to give you an idea of the difference of size of bees, right here where my thumb is, you can see that's a drone right there. See how big that bee is? And you'll notice that his head is really large and black. Let me see if I can grab him. Hard to do with gloves on. And then the rest of these are pretty much worker bees. So that's the difference in the sizes. Now the queen bee is even longer than the drone bee. There he is. That's a drone. It's the male bee, and you could grab them with your hand, they won't sting you. Okay, so in any hive, the terminology, and this is something I always confuse, but the bottom hive, and it's usually what they call the deep, and that hive is where the queen and the eggs and the honey need to be, and that's like the core of the hive. And then after that, you have additional wood frames, and these are called supers. Even though this one's the same size as this one, this is called a super. So we're going to go into these hives and pull frames out, and we're going to look for drone cell brood. and we might be able to cut some of that out and take a look to see if there's Varroa mite in them. So this is a frame, and this frame has what's called a piece of foundation in it, and that foundation is shaped like how the bees want to create their comb, and it encourages the bees to come in, and what they do is they come in, they eat honey, and they secrete wax off their side, their abdomen, and they pull that wax off, and then they go start building the comb out. So this is a relatively new one in the hive, so they haven't quite pulled that out yet. So now we see a more drawn out frame with the wax, and you can see in here, you can see how they're collecting nectar and they're filling it into those cells, and they've done it on both sides and they're working it. And so what they're doing is basically they're going out, they're grabbing nectar off the flowers, they're bringing it in here and they're storing it. And what I really always find fascinating, and I don't know how they know how to do this, but these cells are at an 11-degree angle. I believe it's an 11-degree angle up so that nothing falls out. So somehow they know how to build the comb and get it up at an angle that's just right for them to work it without losing too much space. So we've taken a look at some of the supers. You get an idea of how the comb is pulled out, but this comb is meant for honey and storing honey. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this super off. We're going to get into here and see if we can find any brood, which is where the eggs have been laid and where the mites would be to suck on the larvae. That's where the mites are going to live. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get into the areas where the mites are living, and that's what we're going to do next. So the reason you need these hive tools is the bees go out and they get this stuff called propolis, which I believe is the bees go out to the trees and collect sap, and it's almost like a glue, and they seal up all the cracks in the hive because they don't want germs getting in, and they don't want foreign other bugs and so forth getting in there. So they use this to help protect their hive. I'm told it's as sterile as an operating room, but I'm not sure which operating room they were talking about. Okay, right away we've got some brood here. I mean, this is a larva, and we'll see more of this when we get into it. Looks like they're doing a little work here. This right here, this larva that was on the side and pulled off, people actually buy this and eat it. They consider it it's a protein, and they consider it some type of nutritive health restore. I don't know, but you guys want to try it? No? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead into these frames, and the bees are getting kind of irritated with the process here, so I think I'll just skip to the chase and get on down here. Although this one right here looks like it might have some drone brood in it, so why don't I go ahead and pull that out, and we might be getting to what we're after, where the mites are. Or actually, hopefully the mites aren't. Whee! Okay, so now we're making a little progress. All right, so now I got some drone cells, and I've got some brood. The queen's been up here planting eggs. So what you see right here is the brood, and these are capped, what's called capped cells. And so that larva, that white larva that we just looked at, is actually under that capped cell, and it's growing right now. And if there's a Varroa mite in there, that mite's in there sucking on that and breeding. These are drone brood cells, and those are the large males that we saw earlier, and the tendency is for the Varroa mite to get into those cells. And the drone bees tend to be planted on the outside of the hive and the outside of the frames because they don't need that many drones, and drones are basically useless to them except for breeding the queen. So there's only about 5–10% of the hive is drone cells, and in the wintertime, in fact, they kick a lot of the drones out and basically kill them off because they don't need them in the hive. But almost every one of these cells that's empty or looks empty has an egg in it or a small larva in it. So that's how the queen produces, and then they need to have honey and pollen right close to them while they're doing this, so they can feed the bee, so they can feed their population. So I'm going to take off this what's called a full super. This is a shallow super, and then there's a medium, and this is a full. I'm going to take this off, and we're going to find a lot more brood cells down here, hopefully, and see what's going on. But there's going to be an awful lot of bees buzzing around, so hopefully we can do this without too much fanfare. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pull one of these out and see how well the queen's doing, pulling the laying eggs, and how the brood's doing. And oh my goodness. Okay, now on any one of these, I believe are somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 bees on each side. So what you're looking at right now is about 5,000 bees on both sides. And the other thing you'll notice on this side is you'll see all this capped brood right here. And that means the queen has absolutely gone to town, and that's the refresh of the bees, you know? So you see what I'm talking about? Look at all that. That's all bees that are about to come. So in the next 5 to 10 days, these suckers are going to come out. Well, the good news is it's been raining a little bit, and so we're going to have a nectar flow, and they're going to get on it and get to work. So what we've got here now is a queen cell, and there's a queen in there most likely. And what they're doing is they're growing so fast and so large. I'm just guessing, but there's at least 50,000 bees in this hive already. And that's a good strong hive, okay? So what they do is they swarm, and when they swarm, they produce queens, and then the queens battle, and then the last queen goes down and puts out a scent, and the worker bees and about half the hive, along with the older queen, will take off, and they'll go look for another nest to work in. And the idea of swarming, it's protective. It's to allow them to be able to propagate their species. So what happens is the new queen, once she comes out, the old queen basically takes off with about half the hive, and they eat a bunch of honey, and they get up in a big swarm, and you'll see them. I caught one in a tree here the other day, and I'll tell you what, they're looking to make a new home. And so they take off from that hive, and then this new queen that they've got going, she goes out and mates with a drone, comes back and starts laying eggs. And the new queens lay eggs, somewhere around 1,500 eggs a day they'll lay for the hive. And they'll do that for 2 or 3 years, and then generally they die and they need to be replaced. So one of the what they call helpful preventative methods to control Varroa mites, it's not to get rid of them but to control them, is to use screen bottom boards. Most of this was found out, they think, because the feral hives that did survive, the 1 or 2% that survived the feral, they realized that when you've got a hive out in the wild, there's nothing under it to hold the mites. But now I've also read that mites, that they've done studies and they're not sure, it's inconclusive whether these things work or not. But the idea is that you've got bees living in the deep. This would be the deep in the frame and in their foundations, and they're living on top of this screen bottom board. And if a mite is crawling on a bee and it falls off, it's going to fall to the screen and fall through and be unable to get back in the hive. So if the mite can't get back in the hive, you've got less mites, is the theory. So they do screen bottom boards. What it also does is provide a lot of ventilation to the hive. It used to be just a solid wood board, and the bees produce a lot of heat. They need to stay at 93 degrees year round. And so it gives them more ventilation, and it actually helps them to survive. So the screen bottom board, it's more like they are in nature. It doesn't hurt them. And if it helps, you know, if it helps knock out a few mites, then let's do it. So all these hives I have here now have screen bottom boards. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this sifter, and we're going to put some powdered sugar in it. And we're going to open up the hive, and we're going to sprinkle it on the different frames, and it'll cause the bees to clean themselves, and it'll pull the ticks off of them, or the Varroa mites off of them. And then if we do this properly, and if there were mites, what's going to happen is I'm going to slide this plastic cover under here, and if the mites fall off, they'll fall onto it and we'll be able to see them. Otherwise, it's a screen bottom board, and I won't be able to see if it had an effect or not. So one thing to note is this is a plastic cover off a tub that I had in my bee equipment area. I've changed all my bottom boards to screen bottom boards, so I had to improvise. So being a pragmatic beekeeper that I am, you know, improvise. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to take some of this powdered sugar, no more than a cup, and I'm just guessing at how much is actually going to go in there, but that's a cup. And set that aside. And then what I'm going to do here is we're going to start pulling off these frames, these supers, and we're going to sprinkle the bees with the powdered sugar, and we'll see what drops off. So you'll see here we've got capped, this is honey they're putting in here, and they've capped it off. Once it gets to, I think it's 17 or 18 or 20% water content, that's when they seal it off, and that low water content is what causes it to last for hundreds of years, if not more. I mean, it might crystallize, but it'll still stay good. The other thing to note here is the pollen. Look at the different colors of pollen. If you see these cells right here, where there's orange and kind of a light yellow, and that's what they bring in from the outside and they store it, and then they mix it with the honey and they eat it. That's how they get their protein and their energy. So what I saw on the video was you just sprinkle sugar on them, and that causes them to clean themselves off, and apparently it annoys them too. They'd be happy getting that kind of sugar. I wonder if they get a sugar rush. See that, all that brood? That's a really good sign. You'll notice that this hive isn't near as strong as that other one. I came down here one time and I had shorts on. I had shorts and a t-shirt, and I thought I could get in here real quick, and I thought I could get in here and I thought I could get this Boardman feeder in the slot. So I came down here. When I tried to push it in, it wouldn't go in, and I had a bottle of sugar water, and as soon as I tried to shove it in there, I killed some bees, and the sound became very onerous. It just got really intense, like it is now, probably a little more. And all of a sudden this little voice said, "Run!" And I went jumping over this thing and I started running up that hill, and there were bees all over me. And I was laughing because I thought, boy, what a stupid thing I just did, you know. And I got about 4 or 5 stings. I was all right, but I'll tell you what, you only try that once, or at least I'm only going to. So this is the first time I've done this bee sifting, and there's 3 bees in there that are just completely covered with sugar. And I feel bad for them, and they'll eventually get it off of them, but I'd like to get them out of there and on the road to recovery if I can. So I've noticed that this hive is swarming down below here. You can see a bubble of bees, and basically it's doing real well. It's real strong. This is the time of season where they'll get a new queen for this hive. The old queen will join this swarm. It'll get to 2-3 pounds, and then it'll go off into the trees and they'll send out scout bees looking for the next home. And once they find that next home, they start all over again, and they start pulling out wax and start up with a whole new colony. Okay, well, since I improvised and they're all pretty irritated, I'm hoping I can get this tray back out of here now. It's not going to be easy, and they're not going to be cooperative. Okay, let's see if we've got mites. Here's a hive beetle that we shook off. That's a good thing. But I really don't see, what I see is a lot of sacks of bee pollen that got knocked off, and a couple of hive beetles, but I don't see any. This is a hive beetle right here, and it's good to kill them and get them out too, but I don't really see any I don't see any mites. Okay, so we gave this hive a pretty good dusting and pulled the tray out and took a look, and we found a couple hive beetles, which isn't great, and we'll treat for them, but from the Varroa mite standpoint, it doesn't look like this hive has the mites at all, which is a good sign really for the rest of the hive, since they've all commingled to some level at some point. So I guess we're good here. I'll just check again in the fall and see if they've got them then, and just keep working it until I get comfortable that I don't need to treat them at all. So hopefully who's ever watching out there, if you're doing bees, so let's see if you can get rid of those pesticides and start doing treatments through screen bottom boards and powdered sugar, and see if we can't turn this thing around with losing bees.